Solving equations with fractions using the LCD. So we're going to use this specific strategy in order to make sure that we clear the denominators from an equation before we solve. First, we'll start by finding the LCD, and let's look at the first example. We have the denominators 4 and 7. Therefore, the least common multiple of the denominators, the LCD, is 28. Next, as long as we're using the correct LCD, each denominator will divide into that LCD evenly when we multiply each term on both sides. So let's start with multiplying 28 times 1 over 7x. Since I am multiplying times a fraction, I'll simply multiply times 28 over 1 just so we can make sure we have a visual of the numerator and denominator of both expressions. For the next expression, I'm also multiplying times a fraction 5 over 4, so I'll write the multiplication of 28 over 1 there as well. And then lastly, I'm multiplying a negative 1 over 7, and I will also multiply the 28 in fraction form. The way we can tell that we're using the correct LCD is we should see that each denominator divides into 28 evenly. So let's start with the first denominator. 7 divides into 28 an even 4 times. For the next denominator, 4 divides into 28 evenly 7 times. And the last denominator, 7, divides into 28 4 times. Therefore, the equation changes from an equation with 3 fractions to an equation with no fractions. 4 times 1x is 4x, plus 5 times 7 is 35, equals a negative 1 times 4 is a negative 4. Now we can simply solve the two-step equation from here. Pause the video, solve the rest of the equation, play to see if your answer is correct. Pause now. So your final answer should be x equals to a negative 39 over 4. Let's look at another example. So in the next equation, we're going to follow the same exact steps. First, we're going to find the LCD. We have 5 and 2 for the denominators. Therefore, the least common multiple of the denominators, the LCD, is 10. Next, following the same step, we're going to take the LCD and multiply each term on both sides. So, since I'm multiplying times a fractional expression here, I'm going to also line up my 10 over 1, and I'm multiplying that times x plus 1 over 5. The next term is just the subtraction of 1, so it's just simply multiplying times 10. And then the last expression is a fractional expression, so I'm going to arrange it as if I'm multiplying times 10 over 1. So now we're back to making sure that we divide the denominators into the LCD. So for the first denominator, 5 divides into 10 2 times. And ultimately, we're going to end up multiplying the 2 times x plus 1. Right? 1 times 10 is just 10, so there's nothing to divide into. There's no denominator. For the last denominator, 2 divides into 10 5 times. And ultimately, we will be multiplying that 5 times 2x plus 7. Now we can finish multiplying. So using the distributive property, we distribute 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times a positive 1 is plus 2. Again, 1 times 10 is just 10, so minus 10 comes down. And using the distributive property again, 5 times 2x is 10x, and 5 times 7 is 35. We can finish solving from here, making sure that we first combine like terms, and of course we're just combining the 2 minus 10 in order to simplify the left side of the equation. So that leaves 2x minus 8 equals to 10x plus 35. So from here, pause the video, solve the rest of the equation, and then play to make sure your answer is correct. Your final answer should be x equals a negative 43/8. If you did not get that correct answer, pause the video again or rewind, take a look at the following steps. For the next two equations, solve both equations using the steps that we've just used. Find the LCD, multiply each term by the LCD in order to divide out any denominators, and then solve. So pause the video, solve both equations, replay the video to make sure your steps are correct. The LCD is 6 for this equation. Multiplying each of the three terms by 6. The first term is not a fraction, so we simply just multiply times 6. For the next term, it is a fraction, so I'll arrange it as 6/1, multiplying times 1/2. And the last term is also a fraction. I will also multiply it times 6/1, since it is a fraction. From here, you should have ended up with a negative 18x plus 2 divides into 6 3 times evenly, therefore that leaves you with 3 equals 3 divides into 6 2 times evenly, and of course 2 times 1 is 2. So solving the equation from here is very easy. So your last two steps, subtracting 3 from both sides and then dividing by a negative 18, your final result should be x equals a positive 1/18. And for the last equation, the LCD is 5, not 10, because we only have 5s in the denominator. So multiplying each of the three terms times 5, for the first term I'll multiply times 5/1, since that is a fractional expression. The next term I'll simply just multiply times 5, since that's only the subtraction of 2. And for the last expression, I will multiply times 5/1, since it is a fraction. So quickly dividing my denominators out, 5 divides into 5 once, so that leaves me with 1 times x, which is x. Then I have the subtraction of 2 times 5, which is 10, equals 5 divides into 5 once, and 7 times 1 is 7. After adding 10 to both sides, the solution to the equation is x equals to 17.